Good morning. Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today is dedicated in loving memory to Nishmat Haron's father, Moshe Haron ben Lulu, Rabbi Shlomo, and Sandy's aunt, Louise Bat Gorgie, for their Askara, sponsored by Sandy and Haron Shochet. Breakfast in the Class also dedicated loving memory to Nishmat, their uncle, Shimon Sion ben Yosef Simcha, Rabbi Shlomo, sponsored by Shalom and his brother, Daniel Hazan. As well, dedicated loving memory to Nishmat Aharon Yaakov ben Shemuel, Avi Mori Aharon Yaakov ben Shemuel, sponsored by his son Shimshon Deutscher, for the Refuah Shlema v'Yal Shemo Mazal for today, and the continued health of Chana Bat Simafega. The learning for this entire week is dedicated by the Torah Center Silver Donor Shalom Hazan, in loving memory of his grandfather Shalom ben Yosef Vitamo and his uncle Shimon Sion ben Yosef V'Simcha. The year of breakfast in the class is dedicated loving memory to Nishmat Ruth Urfali Batadela, sponsored by her family. And finally, the breakfast and the class is dedicated loving memory to Nishmat Aharon as well. Mechila is dedicated for the in honor of the recent wedding of Alex and Fortune. Mazal Tov and congratulations to the Mishan and to the LeBeau's family. Beautiful wedding and beautiful Shabbat Berachot. Okay, let's begin. We have a beautiful idea that I wanted to take a look at with you guys today, and that is as follows. Let's take a look at what it says in the Pasuk. We say it every day in the Azashir, right? That Hakadosh Baruch Hu, they see the Egyptians are running towards the ocean, the Jews are terrified of what's behind them, and the Jewish people cross into the ocean, and God, and they transform this experience from what it is, where they're experiencing, into something completely different. So bear with me when I unfold this idea with you, because I think it's a very powerful one. The word that's used when it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took the Jewish people through, is it uses a very interesting expression. It says that the Jewish people crossed Betoch HaYam bayabasha, in the waters, bayabasha, on dry land. Later on in Azashir, right at the end, we say Kiba Sus Paro Birbo Barasha Vayam Vayashiv Amunai Alehem Et Me'ayam Ubnei Yisrael Halechu bayabasha betoch hayam. The Egyptians come in, all of the horses of Paro and all of his people, and Hakadosh Baruch Hu vayashiv, and Hashem returned. He brought back the water, alehem et me'ayam, all of the waters of the ocean. Bnei Yisrael, and the Jewish people, are bayabasha, on dry land, betoch hayam. Now the commentators point out that in the first time it says betoch hayam, in the water, bayabasha, on dry land. The second time it says when God returned the water, it was bayabasha betoch hayam, on dry land, in the ocean. So the classical answer, the classical understanding of this is that when the Jewish people first stepped in, actually they were not stepping into dry land. What were they stepping into? They were stepping into an ocean. And how did the ocean split? The Gemara tells us about Nachshon ben Aminadav, that he runs forward, and as he runs forward, he steps into the ocean, nothing happens, he keeps going, the water keeps getting up, till finally, as the Pasuk says in Tehillim, Giu Mayim ad Nafesh, the waters reached the highest point that he could reach, and at that point, the sea split. Everyone else then, all the Jewish people, what kind of ocean are they going into? They're going into Betoch HaYam bayabasha. But not really all of them. Really only Nachshon ben Aminadav. Those that come after Nachshon ben Aminadav are already stepping in on dry land, because the ocean splits and it goes all the way down to the ocean bed, the ocean floor, and now they're walking on the dry ocean floor, so to speak, after the waters have been split for Nachshon ben Aminadav. So the classical interpretation is that when the Jewish people come in, it's a sea that then becomes Yabasha, whereas when the Egyptians are chasing the Jewish people, they're coming into a sea that's already been split, so they're going by Yabasha, on dry land, Betoch HaYam. However, I think that there's another way of looking at this that I think is really powerful and actually is worthwhile to understand this transition. There's a transition that happens here from fear to faith. The Jewish people are terrified. They're crying out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They see an ocean in front. They see people behind. There's tremendous fear. What happens only a short while later? We hear the Jewish people singing, Az Yashir Moshe Bnei Yisrael. Now, simply put, the Jewish people's song of faith happens because they actually wind up seeing all the Egyptians that are chasing them drowning in the ocean behind them. So this song of faith of Az Yashir Moshe is really kind of a little bit after the fact, after they see that their faith was unwarranted. But I don't want to focus particularly on whether or not they did do it, they didn't get it right, they did get it right. I want to focus on the transitioning from faith to fear. Because from fear, to faith. I think for many, many people, there are moments that they go through where there's a tremendous amount of fear in their life. And what they don't understand is that they think that there's something that needs to change that will save them from this fear. But actually, real emunah is not waiting for the fear to abate, for the problem to be solved, to sing songs of Ashir al Adonai ki ga'o ga'asus v'rachmo Rabbi Yam, that I'm singing songs after the horses and the enemy is drowned, but rather the most beautiful transition is when a person is seeing faith in their fear. Now, this to me is really everything about how a Jewish person is supposed to live. I saw an amazing idea that kind of crystallizes this. And I want to share this with you as a almost like a mantra that a person can keep repeating. You know what fear is? Fear is living in a world of what if. Faith is living in a world of even if. Your faith is always asking, well, what if? And what if this? And what if that? Your fear is always asking that question. Faith is always saying, even if that. So let's try and apply this concept. Nachshon ben Aminadav looks at an ocean. He's being told by Moshe Rabbeinu, God said, Vayisau, just travel, move forward. But he's looking at the ocean and he thinks to himself, what if I drown? What if this doesn't work out the way it's supposed to? Faith is what girds Nachshon ben Aminadav to say, even if there's an ocean in front of me, this is what I'm supposed to do. Now, I know a lot of people here are going to be thinking, when you hear this, well, what do you mean? How does a person ever make decisions then? Am I supposed to ignore risk? Am I supposed to ignore danger? Am I supposed to just choose, even if moments, even if it's going to fail, even if it's going to hurt me, even if it's going to be dangerous? Is that how I choose? The answer is no. Here, Nachshon ben Aminadav had a clear mandate. God had said, travel, Vayisau. Once he knew what he was supposed to do, then he's already to say, even if, instead of what if. So when you're looking at things in front of you, and you are hesitating on moving forward, when you know something is right, and I have to say, it is so much the case that very often, when we think we don't know what we're supposed to do, what we actually mean is not, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but rather, how am I supposed to do what I'm supposed to do? Isn't this a problem? Isn't that a problem? What if? What if? What if? Real faith, my friends, is not found in words. Real faith is found in the steps I take forward, knowing even if I have faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, let me ask you this question. When it comes to prayer, you're supposed to do it. When it comes to Shabbat, you're supposed to do it. When it comes to forgiveness, you're supposed to do it. When it comes to developing good midot and conquering evil midot, you're supposed to do it. Now let's try and look at this and think to ourselves, what's our response in life when we know we're supposed to do something? Well, if I'm not angry at this person, if I forgive them, what if I forgive them and then they'll learn to always do this thing incorrectly? There's a beautiful line that's said by the Navi Yeshaya to the king of Israel at the time, Hiskiyahu. We told that Hiskiyahu is sick and he's going to die. Yeshaya comes, the Navi comes to visit him, and he says, what are you doing? You're sick, you're going to die. You know why you're going to die? You're going to die because you did a sin. And your sin was that you didn't marry and you didn't try to have children. Hiskiyahu says to Yeshaya, you know why I didn't marry and have children? Because I saw b'nevuah in prophecy that the child I would have would be Menashe, and Menashe would ultimately lead all the Jewish people off the deep end into idol worship. That's why I didn't have a child. That's why I didn't get married. Yeshaya says to Hiskiyahu, he says, why are you busy figuring out the cheshbonot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Why are you busy asking questions about what God has planned for what's going to be in the future? You do what you're supposed to do. He turns to Yeshaya, he says, okay, you know what? Let me marry your daughter. Maybe the combined zechuyot of myself and your daughter will merit us that the nivu'ah, the prophecy that I have, should not come to fruition. Yeshaya refuses, he leaves, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends him back. Go back, get involved. This is what's happening. In the end, that's how it goes. Now here's the most fascinating part of the story. Chizkiyahu's hope that their combined zechuyot would result in them not having a child like Menashe does not happen. They have a Menashe. His worst fears that Menashe would lead the Jewish people astray, bring them all to idol worship. They are not averted. They happen. Menashe does bring the Jewish people to idol worship. And yet Yeshaya's refrain still holds true. Why are you busying yourself with the calculations of heaven? You do what you're supposed to do. What a magnificent idea. Nachshon ben Aminadav understands one thing. Ocean, no ocean. Moshe Rabbeinu told me that God said, travel. When we have moral and ethical imperatives, when we know what the right thing to do is, then instead of saying and paying lip service to emunah, paying lip service to tefillah, I'm going to pray and everything's going to be Hashem is asking, I don't want your faith to live in the world of potentials, in the world of maybes, in the world of prayer. I want your faith to live in this world, in how you go to office, in how you go into the boardroom, in how you make decisions for your children, in how you decide decisions for your relationship. What if I know this person's not right for me because I'm on a much higher level of spirituality and she is not interested, or vice versa? I know it's wrong. I know I'm going to be sacrificing my very self, my soul, in order to be part of this relationship, but I don't want to be alone. What if I wind up alone? Faith asks a very different question than fear does. Fear says, what if? Faith says, even if. Let's take it to the next level. I love the idea, Pasuk says, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu splits Mehayam. Mehayam, he returns Mehayam, the waters of the Yam. Now it's interesting, because the word Yam and the word Mei are the same letters. Mehayam, the waters of the sea. Now, of course, on a simple surface level, they're the same letters. Yam and Mei are the same letters because they have the same essence. A Yam is made up of Mayim, of Mei. But I'd like to suggest maybe something else. The word Mei, which means waters, is also the same word as me. Who? Paro. When Moshe Rabbeinu and Aharon come to Paro and they say, we want to take the Jewish people, we want to go serve God. What does Paro say to them? Mi vami haholechim. Who's traveling? Who's going? Who exactly do you want to take out into the desert? Al Chachamim say that Paro was actually tapping into an element of prophecy. That that there's going to be two people that will actually wind up crossing the desert and getting into the land of Israel. Who is that? Kalev ben Yefuneh and Yehoshua ben Nun. So you want to go out, who anyway is already going to complete this journey? Only two people. But leaving that aside for 1 second, what Paro is asking is Who are these people that you think are going to go serve God? Who are these tzaddikim that you think are going to go bring sacrifices, are going to go service and serve Hashem in the desert? All these Jews in Egypt, I've managed to convince them to swap out their belief in God for another deity. The Midrash tells us that when the Jewish people came to the ocean and Moshe Rabbeinu asked that the ocean split for the Jews and not for the Egyptians, the angel of the Egyptians said, Halalu obdei avodah zarah v'halalu obdei avodah zarah. Both of these, they serve avodah zarah, the Jews and the Egyptians. Why should I split for one and not for the other? Says Paro to Moshe, you're asking for God's servants to leave and service him in the desert. Who are these people you're talking about? Mi va mi ha'olechim. These words, me, who, denotes not just a depiction or a delineation of this person or this person, but rather it asks a much more profound question. Who is the person that we're pointing to? The Mishnah Avot says, Im en ani li, mi li. If no one will act on my behalf, if I will not act on my behalf, mi li, who's going to act for me? What the Mishnah is asking is a very simple question. You want to know what the definition of me is, of myself? What is the definition of that? The definition is that which you do that nobody else can do for you. And that's a double-edged sword. Let me explain what that means. On one level, you know what the definition of me in Hebrew is? Me is something that nobody did for me. If I was raised in a religious home, and I was taught many things, and I do those things that I was taught, that's not me. That's my education. That's my nurture. Where does me begin? Me begins where everything that was done for me stops. What did I do over and above what I was given? What did I do myself? Im en anili mili. The second thing is not just that I have to do it for myself in order for it to be me, but the second element of this is not just that they can't do it for me. The second thing is, my friends, something that I feel is even more powerful in this instance. It's not just what did I do without the input, without the encouragement, without the peer pressure of others. But it also says something much more different, much more unique. In terms of doing mitzvot averot, there's a set group of mitzvot averot that a person should do or not do. But what makes a person unique is not only the mitzvot that they stretch themselves to do, that's just more, and that's why it's mine. I'll give you an example. If you give me $1 million, and I take that $1 million and I make another $1 million, I come back to you and I say, look, I have $2 million. I made $2 million. What's the guy going to tell me? You didn't make $2 million. I gave you $1 million. You did a profit of $1 million, but $1 million of that too is mine. How much do you have? $1 million. The simple understanding of Imen Anili Mili is, whatever was given to you is not yours. So the extra that I did, that's mine. Imen Anili Mili. If I didn't do it for me, who's going to do it for me? Only the things that I did for myself are count in my account. But the second understanding, my friends, is something maybe a little bit more profound. It's not about the mitzvot and the averot, the more and the less. It's what did I bring that no one else could bring? Which insight, which mitzvah, which chidush Torah, which great idea in chesed, which sensitivity towards a parent. Imen anili mili. Who is going to bring out the things in which I was created uniquely in order to be able to achieve? According to this now, we understand maybe, and God returned the waters of the ocean onto the Egyptians. And the Jewish people crossed through. Bnei Yisrael halchu bayabasha b'toch hayam. The idea is that every single person experiences a yam. a big sea, something that is very difficult for them to cross. But the irony is that their identity, is forged in the crossing of something that they did not believe that they could cross. So if you've not yet had a crossing sea, not a split sea, but a willingness to enter a sea that you did not know the answer to, that you did not have the faith to attack with uncertainty, not with clarity, that you did not have an even if moment, then you have not yet been born. It's fascinating to me as well that the word me, which means who, and it crossed over into the English language, that when I'm referring to myself, what's the English way of saying myself? Me. Me. What makes you who you are? Crossing into a yam. What is the yam made up of? What is this ocean that you cross, this difficulty, this challenge that you attack, not sure if you're even going to win, that creates you, that gives you your name? Yaakov, we know, gets the name Yisrael for the Jewish people. In a battle he does not win. What is this yam made up of that a person experiences? And the answer is, the yam is made up of me, of who. The challenges that form us are ones that ask you, who are you? What are you? You're put in a position, and the position is demanding an answer. What is your integrity? How courageous are you? How brave are you? When a person faces that yam, they receive their me diploma because they were challenged. But my friends, the hidush here is that not in every scenario does a person get the chance to be able to see the scenario resolve in the way that they would have wanted. Not every betoch hayam that you enter do you experience a yabasha, a splitting of the sea. But in every scenario that you plunge into a betoch hayam, in every scenario of betoch hayam, you experience a coming of age, a becoming of who I am, just for the fact that you faced your fear with faith. And you didn't ask what if, you said even if. And your even if is bolstered by the fact that I have emunah and I know that I can go into this ocean. I don't know whether it will split or not. I don't know whether my problem will get solved. I don't know whether I'll get out on the other side. But I know I have to do this. And in choosing to enter into the yam, you receive your me, your may, your who. You become the person that you are. You reveal the kochot that you didn't know that you had. I love this concept. Right in the beginning when we talk about the betoch hayam bayabasha, right? The pasuk tells us something very interesting. The pasuk says, "Vayavru betoch hayam bayabasha," and they crossed betoch hayam bayabasha. We explained what that means, but I love in this context the word vayavru. Now you could have said vayavo, and they came into betoch hayam bayabasha. Vayikansu, and they entered. Vayelchu. But it doesn't say that. It says vayavru. And they crossed betoch hayam bayabasha. I think there's something magnificent here. when they stepped into a betoch hayam ocean, that moment was a vayavru. The Jewish people are called Ivrim, Hebrews, after Avraham HaEvri. Avraham HaEvri, why is he called HaEvri? The Chachamim explain it's because Avraham came me'ever hanahar, from the other side of the ocean, from the other side of the river. The whole world stood on one side of the river, and Avraham was me'ever hanahar, from the other side. He lived in opposition to everyone in the world. Everyone in the world worshipped idols, and he was a monotheist. Everyone in the world believed in a selfish ideology. He believed in achnasat orchim and chesed. So he was someone who had set himself apart. He crossed the Nahar. He crossed the river. Well, when the Jews went down to Egypt, what happened to them? They became like the Egyptians. So much so, like we said earlier, halalu obdei avodah zarah, halalu obdei avodah zarah. They both serve idols. Let me share with you something beautiful. The Chachamim tell us that when the Jewish people were in Egypt, so after Hashem decided to take them out, what did he do? He did 10 makot to take the Jews out of Egypt. The Midrash says, you know why God did 10 makot? The 10 makot that God did for the Jews in Egypt were because of the 10 tests of Avraham. So you look at that and you think to yourself, what's the connection between the 10 makot and the 10 trials of Avraham? So maybe you could understand simply that what it means is that Avraham's merit earned them, 10 makot. But there's a much deeper way of seeing it. Each one of the 10 trials of Avraham built a faith in Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu was at the height of those that believe. If that's the case, my friends, God says to Avraham Avinu, don't worry, your children are going to go down to Egypt, but when I take them out, I'm going to take them out in a way where they'll leave enriched, birchush gadol. And that people, dan anochi, I will judge. That's what God says. The purpose of judging the Egyptians, of punishing them, on one level was to say to Avraham, I took your kids into exile, but I will return them to you the way that you remember. Each one of the 10 makot, which restored the Jewish people's faith in God, therefore, was earned by a level of faith that Avraham paid for with blood, sweat, and tears in his trials. How poetic it is then that the final brushstroke of Yetziat Mitzrayim is that the Jewish people cross a river, a Yam, just like their grandfather did. And he was called Ivri. Vaya'avru, and the Bnei Yisrael cross Betoch HaYam bayabasha. Ivrim again. My friends, as a great grandson of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, every single Jewish person is born with faith. Can it be beat out of him? Yes. Can it be educated out of him, quote unquote, educated by the separation of church and state and not allowing prayer in schools? Yes, it can be beat out of him. But he starts with it there, and it's always dormant, waiting to be awakened. My friends, that faith is a birthright earned by Avraham Avinu, trial by fire, Yitzhak Avinu, Yaakov Avinu. Through everything that the Jewish people went through, there is a burning faith inside of every Jew. Sometimes it needs a little bit more fanning. Sometimes it needs a little bit more re-education after you've been educated away from your deepest truth. So when do you see yourself emerge? When you face your Yam. How will you know if this was your Yam? if the Yam tested every may, because that's what it's made up of you and me, of who you are. I don't believe necessarily that there's only one Yam. Just like there was a Nahar that Avraham crossed. Fascinating. And when Yisrael, Yaakov, has to fight this fight, what do we read over there? Vayivater Yaakov levado. Yaakov has to cross alone also. Crosses the river. And that's where his fight is. There seems to be instances of this in every great moment. When the Jews finally are ready to enter into the land of Israel, how do they enter? They cross the river Jordan. Again, a splitting of a river that has to happen. Every great moment of your life, every great accomplishment of your life will come in the aftermath of you learning who you are by crossing a Yam, a Nahar. Hashem should bless us to be able to see those moments as the tests that they are, and not get discouraged and think that this is just some sort of painful thing I have to get through. You're not getting through it. You're not going through it. You're growing through it. I'm going to give you this and leave you with this. If someone was going through all the difficult things at work, they'd think to themselves, this job is too hard. I quit. But what if before all of those jobs started flying at you, your boss said to you, I'm thinking of who to promote to managing this whole team. We want to employ one person in the company as the new CEO, as the new president of the company. We're going to be testing people to see how much they can handle, if they can take on this new big responsibility, this big bump in pay. We want to see who could do it. And all of a sudden, the same jobs landed on your desk. If you don't realize that this is God saying, show me you're ready for a promotion, you take the load and you quit because of it. But if you see it as something, the Yam as a May, and the May as a me, then you see that Hashem is preparing you for great things. Not only do you not quit, but you face those new tasks with a vigor and an energy that is even greater than what you had before. Make no mistake, every Yam is doing that for you. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.